Welcome to the Next Level Casino Careers Show, a series highlighting industry tips and insights from the best minds in the casino and hospitality industry. Enjoy the show.
Hello, Lori. Welcome to Next Level Casino Careers. How are you doing today?
I'm good, Serena. How are you?
I'm doing great. We're so happy to have you today. I know it's tax season, you're in audit, busy time for Lori Ware, our Senior Vice President of Casino Finance at Yaamava Resort Casino. So just want to say we're really happy to have you. Thank you for taking the time out of your busy schedule.
Thank you very much for having me. I appreciate taking the time to tell everybody about the exciting world of finance.
Yes. We like to start the show by having our guests share their journey, their origin story. So if you can tell me a little bit about yourself, your early years, where you've been, and what you do today.
So I grew up in Las Vegas, Nevada. I lived there most of my life. I had my children there as well, and I also got my undergrad from UNLV. When my children graduated high school, my babies, my 25-year-old babies, when they graduated, I took the opportunity to move out of Nevada, and I took an opportunity in Chicago, and I stayed in Chicago for a couple of years. And just FYI, for anybody who's listening, love Chicago, don't do snow. I guess it took me
Chicago too. There's so much to do downtown, just the food options, and it's a great place to be.
Yeah, well, the transportation, you can take the train all weekend for like $20. So you can go back and forth. It was a great place to live. Snow was just very, very not my thing. I definitely like the sunny weather of the West Coast. So I had the opportunity to take a job out here in San Manuel in sunny California. My original position was Director of Financial Services, VP of Financial Services and Special Projects. Basically, I ran the finance and the accounting for the Yaamava expansion. And about a year after being here, I got the opportunity to apply for a promotion to the SVP of Casino Finance. And I got the position, and I've been here for a little over almost 4.5 years.
Thank you, Lori, for sharing that with us today. Can you tell me a little bit about, I know we've talked and I wanted to be an attorney. We've shared how you also wanted to be an attorney. How did you pivot from that career path to where you are today, and where were some of your stops you've made along the way in your journey?
So I did when I was very young, and when you're in first and second grade, and you get asked what you want to be when you grow up. Most people don't go out and say, I want to be a CPA. That's usually not on the list, but so I did at a very young age. I wanted to be an attorney. But through the years, I really enjoyed and learned that I had a very math came very easy to me. I really enjoyed math. I was even in geek out here. I was in mathletes in elementary and middle school, where a special group of people that got together in the morning and did complex math problems. Yes, don't share that. Oh, wait. So I've just always really loved math, and luckily it came easy to me. I love geometry, trig. So I decided when I went to get my undergrad that I wanted to go into accounting, very numbers oriented profession. And I believe it was in my 4th year of school when I was in my internal audit class. Dr. Paulette Tandy, who I believe is now the chair of the accounting department at UNLV, had recommended a few students to apply for a job in internal audit at Mirage Resorts. And that was before the MGM Mirage combination. And so I applied for the job and I got it. And that started my career in gaming. I've been in gaming pretty much ever since then.
Awesome. And how many years? A little over 20, 25?
Oh, that's just really unfair, Serena.
I'm just saying you have a lot of experience.
So let me think here. Yeah, probably about 25 years.
That's awesome.
I was 12 when I started. So.
Oh, yes, of course. I know a question that you often get, just changing gears just a little bit, is what's the difference between accounting and finance? So if you can just share with our audience who may need a little bit more help understanding the difference, and then also any advice for those who are unsure of what direction to go? How do you know which one is the best fit out of the two?
Okay. So accounting and finance, ironically, is very, very different. People don't always see that if you're not in the industry. It's looking at accounting. Accounting is really your source of record. So you're actually booking the actual numbers, the results. You have to be very precise, and you have to follow certain regulations, whether you're in, private industry or public sector. You have to follow GAAP or SFASB rules. So there's very certain stipulations on how you have to record things and how things have to be booked. And finance, on the other side, is looking at those numbers that have been recorded and making assumptions and helping project and helping make business decisions based on those numbers and based on the results of the business. So one is creating and booking the numbers, and one is on the backside. Finance is being analytical, making business decisions, and making choices on how to go forward, and advising executives on next steps.
And speaking of advising executives on next steps and just leadership as a whole, I know, just being in this industry, a lot of the numbers that we share and the information we share is confidential. So how do you communicate and coach with your direct reports as far as them relaying the message down to their teams to ensure that we hit our KPIs from a finance perspective without being able to give maybe the whole big picture detail, if that makes sense?
Yeah, so you manage KPIs without give. So you're not going to give them revenue numbers, right? You're going to give them KPI labor numbers, what level of staffing we should have, what results you should have on the different areas of the business, right? If you give them volume indicators and you're in the F&B industry, you kind of look at the number of customers for slots and tables, right? So that you can do staffing correct, make sure you're going to have enough product, but you're not going to give them high level, you're not going to disclose your revenue numbers, you're not going to disclose your net income, your EBITDA, right? But you have to give them those KPIs that you refer to be able to manage their business at the management and supervisor level.
And touching on that a little bit more, how does your vertical touch all departments throughout the casino or any industry really? And how do you foster an environment of collaboration in your daily tasks and all things that you're doing?
So if I could actually elaborate a little bit more on that question, take a step back. One of the things that I think was very integral for me in my career was I started in internal audit at Mirage Resorts, the original position that we discussed. And it is one of the very early on career positions that you get to touch every aspect of the business, right? You audit everything. You audit non-gaming, you audit gaming, you're on the floor doing observations, you're doing interviews with employees, and you're interacting as an internal audit, you're interacting with executives at the GM level, right? So you're getting all that interface and all that interaction, all that learning of every area of the business. So from my perspective, that was one of the things that really helped me, start off my career, because I was able to see right away every area of the business. I didn't just focus on slots or just table games, right? I had the opportunity to overall look at the business as a whole. Mm-hmm. So with that being said, when you get into finance, right, you're looking at the results of every area of the business. So you have to be able to communicate with the different departments with things that are doing well, good results, bad results. You need to be able to partner with the operations to help them make the right decisions for next steps, right? Should they pull back on a program? Is it too expensive? Is it not yielding the right results? You have to help them, marketing, for example, if they're going to do a promotion, you need to sit down with them and do what we like to refer to as a pro forma. This is what we expect it to do. But then you also need to look at it after the fact and say, okay, it did as expected, or it didn't, and why not? So in finance, you really get to work with all of the departments and work with them. So you're here to help them, guide them, but also help them make their goals.
I like how you touched on that. And it is pivotal to be able to guide and lay the foundation for each department to meet their individual goals as well as a whole. And I think another important piece for you and your department is being able to adapt, right? Being able to adapt to the environment and make changes as seen fit. So speaking of that, can you please tell me a time when you've had to introduce a new financial or accounting change in an organization?
So, anytime from a finance and accounting perspective, anytime they make a change to GASB or FASB, you have to look at the way you're recording things and possibly change the accounting treatment. So depending on how intense the change is, for example, right now we're having to make changes to lease accounting standards. So depending on how many leases you have, you work with an outside third party to do, the review and to help you do analytics on what the impact is going to be to make sure that you're recording it correctly, and then make sure it's communicated to the executive team, because something small as a lease recording change can have a material change to your bottom line. And you didn't change the way you did business, they just changed the accounting treatment. So that's very integral to make sure that's conducted thoroughly and it is communicated.
And speaking of making sure that things are introduced and done thoroughly, is there any advice that you would give individuals to avoid any major threatening financial mistake that can happen along the process?
Just being diligent, reviewing your work, reviewing your direct reports work, and making sure that, you're dotting your I's and crossing your T's. Finance and accounting is very precise. I'd say more so on the accounting side, right? Because your numbers have to be right in order to do the finance side of it. But it's just about, checking, dotting your I's, crossing your T's, making sure you work with your internal audit team or your compliance team to make sure that, they're helping you, check for not just finance, but like your regulations, because my world also includes compliance. So I partner with, gaming, who does our internal audit, and then our compliance team to make sure, we're following the NIGC regs and make sure we're, that we're avoiding risk, right? We don't want too much risk or fraud, and just make sure we're protecting the tribal assets as a whole.
So you mentioned that you have compliance. So taking a step back, for individuals, our audience that's tuning in that may not know like the different roles and departments that report up to your vertical, can you share some of the opportunities outside of the basic casino finance that individuals may be able to find within the casino environment?
So in my world, I generally have what you mentioned, the accounting team, the finance team, or FP&A, financial planning and analysis is generally what they're referred to as. I also have the compliance team, which would be your internal compliance, because you also have external compliance who come in and audit firms and gaming, as we mentioned. So with the internal compliance, then we also have the cage team. So all your cage folks would report up through me, as well as your AML and Title 31 compliance would also report up to me. And let's see, am I forgetting anybody? Don't want to forget anybody. Oh, and under FP&A, there is some other groups. The PMO group reports up through FP&A, so that also, and then also the scheduling team will report up through me.
And how are all those departments key to you in what you and your finance team do? Can you elaborate a little bit for some of those audience members that may not be familiar with AML or scheduling and some of those other departments and what their functionalities are within the casino environment?
Sure. So your scheduling team is the team that partners with the operations to ensure we're staffing appropriately, right? So we're making sure we're not overstaffed or understaffed. And they, are taking notes of those who are calling out sick and replacing staff and partnering with the business to make sure staffing is optimal. Then the PM team, they are working project management. So they partner with operations whenever we have a big project that we need to execute. They, example, Yaamava, they were integral in getting that project done, completed, timely, as well as, made sure we didn't miss a beat. They're phenomenal to have on your side. It's really good to, when you have a project that's going to last a couple months, or, by departments, you're going to have several departments involved. They're very important to make sure that everybody, is holding their own responsibility and meeting their deadlines. So nobody, holds that project back. They keep everybody focused and meeting the deadlines. We already talked about FP&A. They're going to be your finance folks. We talked some about audit, which kind of rolls up to, your accounting. Your audit team are the ones that are daily reviewing the numbers and booking your revenues. And so making sure your revenues are booked correctly so that you can report your revenues on a monthly basis, because those are, just so you know, those are reviewed daily, booked monthly, but reviewed daily. We also have we talked about the cage team. They're the folks that are in the cages on property. And they're the heart of the cage, really. They work with table game slots. They do the jackpots. They do the fills and credits on the tables. They're very, very much the heart of the cage, of the casino. And then we talked about AML and Title 31. That's your anti-money laundering. That's to prevent bad guys. Paul Camacho, he's our head of our Title 31 team in AML. And it's, what he is here to do is help us prevent money laundering. We don't want bad guys coming here and using our casino to launder money, right? We want to ensure that we know the source of funds and where the funds are coming from when they come to our casino to play. We want to make sure that, they play here, they have a good time, and, there's no bad things going on.
So just changing gears a little bit, you touched on all those departments, and I'm sure since you started your career, the industry's grown and more departments and regulations have been added since then as well. Can you talk a little bit about the growth that you've seen over the past 20 to 25 years, specifically within gaming, and how that's impacted you and your decision making and the paths that you've chosen to take?
So since I started when I was 12. When
right,
I first
12. Yes.
So when I first started, cashless wagering wasn't a thing. We actually still had coin, right? So when you hear that bing, ding, 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 there was actually coin dropping from the machine when I first started. So we had a team that we actually had called a hard count team. And they were the ones that went around and collected the coins out of each machine, and they would count the coins, and you'd watch them. The machine would wrap them. And so, how all your coins are put, dimes and nickels would be wrapped in certain separate, I don't even know what you call them, envelopes or wrappage or rollage. Or what
I remember that. I remember going to read. I remember going to read out.
Well,
yeah.
There was still coin.
Your baby has Lori.
12.
Yeah.
So what I would say, there's been a lot of innovation through the years in gaming. I mean, I think we can do a lot more, and there's a lot more room for innovation. But a lot of things have changed, right? We've gone to much more kiosks, tickets, ticket in, ticket out, or that's all new, and RFID chips. Being able to read readers to read the chips, the number of chips you have versus having to physically count them. So all these things are changes that have happened in the industry. And for me, all that does is make the industry more exciting, right? It's another technology to learn. It's another accounting treatment to learn how, sometimes when you change the technology or change the process, it changes the way things are accounted for. So it also changes the controls, right? When they took away hard count, the controls had to change, right? Because then it became just soft count, because all we're doing is counting the cash. But when you're counting the cash, you're also counting the tickets that are coming in and out of the machine too. So it changed, and then you have to record the accounting treatment for those tickets. And there's certain rules and regulations. After a certain period of time, those tickets go back into revenue. And I won't bore you guys with all the details, but as those innovations come into play, you not only learn new technologies, you learn new accounting treatments and process.
So you touched on a couple things, innovation and excitement. So speaking along those lines, what are you excited about in the future? What do you see in the future that makes you look forward to continuing to be in this industry?
I would just continue to go back to innovation. Just as we, like I said, cashless wagering is on the horizon now, and the interfaces and more things that we can do at the system. So it gives more and more time for our employees to spend times with the guests and make the guests trip memorable, right? And that's really what we're here to do, right? Is service the guests and make sure that their opportunity here on property is, memorable, right? That's what we're all about. It's about hospitality and having the guests enjoy their time, whether they're gaming, they're in the spa, they're in the hotel, what have you. We want to make that the best time they can have.
Totally switching gears. There's this quote that I heard somebody said one time: "Math is fun, Lori Ware." Can you elaborate on that and why? I hear you say that so often. So just for audience, what does that mean to you? What does that quote mean to you?
So for me, math is fun. I really love math. And I don't know if you've ever heard, people are right brain, left brain. People are very, can be very, very analytical, or they can be very, very, like they're thinking and they're talented, and they can just create things off the chance. They can draw, they're just very creative. Mm-hmm. I can't personally draw a stick figure with a ruler.
I can't either.
So it made very much sense for me to go into finance and accounting. And I love numbers. I love numbers. I love, geometry, the proofs. I love, trigonometry, the rules, and I think some of that may just be the structure, right? I have to admit that I'm kind of a structured individual being in the finance world. Funny, huh? For me, that was it. I've just always really loved to do math. Like I said, I used to, for my free time and for my after school activities or before school activities, I was doing math. So
And ballet. You were doing ballet too.
I was a ballerina for 10 years. Yeah.
That requires some creativity. So you have the creative side on you, going for you as well. And just speaking of creativity, ballet, sports, just different things. You have 3 boys, right, Lori?
Yes, I do. I have.
So, and correct me if I'm wrong, but you balance school, work, and being a mom when they were young all at the same time, right?
I did.
And I was a single mom with 2 kids for a while, and I went back to school and did all that too. So I know how hard that can be. So can you talk to us a little bit about achieving your goals and, continue to push forward and being such a successful leader and balancing all of that, because your boys were very involved in sports and you made it work. So for our audience that's listening and wondering how have you become the success you are today, despite some of the challenges you may have faced along the way with like balancing time and, responsibilities outside of work as well.
Serena, we have that in common. I was a single mom and I raised the 3 boys while I went to school. And what I would say is, first off, be nice to yourself. I mean, you can't be 100% everywhere every time. All you can do is give your best in every area, to your children, to your work, to your school. I would say your family always comes first, right? But I would also say, don't be afraid to ask for help, right? That's what, I'm very blessed. I had a mom and a dad who were, very close to my kids. And, even when I lived in Northern Nevada, they would fly out if something came up or if the boys got sick. And you make a network of friends, right? You meet some other moms who might be in the, in the industry. And so perhaps if you have a graveyard shift you had to go into for an audit, they would help you out, and they would watch, you would watch their kids during the day. You would, you know what I mean? You took turns, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I think what's most important is you have to be kind to yourself. Ask for help. Don't try to do it all. You can't. And if you're doing it all, you're most likely not doing it well. You ask for help. And I think that in my opinion, I think some women are afraid to ask for help because it shows that they're weak or they can't do it all. But it's not. That's what family, that's what friends are for. Ask people for help. The worst thing someone can say is, no, I can't help you. But I think more than likely than not, you're going to get a yes, because that person that you ask is going to also need help. And they're going to say, look, Lori, Serena asked for help. That means, that they need help too. So I shouldn't be so hard on myself. I can ask for help. So I do.
Definitely. No, you've touched on a key point, and we've talked about it. It's just, not overextending yourself to the point where you get burnout, knowing when to ask for help, when to ask for more flexibility at work, whatever it may be, just finding that perfect equation, right?
Say no. You don't have to be the one who, volunteer, learn, develop, take opportunities, but make sure you're not taking on too much. To your point, don't volunteer too. At some point, you're going to take on one too many, and you're going to make yourself look worse than if you hadn't accepted that last project, because there is a tipping point, right? So you need to balance, right? You need to know when to say no and when to ask for help.
Yeah, find your voice, know when to use it.
Very, very true.
And which so you're touching on networking and connections. So just changing gears just a little bit, but still staying along the lines of networking. Global Gaming Women, you've been a part of Global Gaming Women. I remember seeing you on a panel when I first joined the casino 3 years ago, you and a few other leaders from here. And that really was inspirational to me. I joined Global Gaming Women after that. Can you talk to me a little bit and our audience about Global Gaming Women and how that is such a huge part of networking and how important it is for female leaders?
So I think you hit the nail on the head. It's very important for networking Global Gaming Women, right? It gives the opportunity for folks to meet each other across departments, talk about what do you do, what do I do, look at opportunities that might be something you are interested in someday. But I also think it's an opportunity to discuss, like what we were discussing earlier, how do you do it all? right? I think oftentimes we can be too hard on ourselves because we can't do it all. And we're, like I said before, we don't want to ask for help. But I think being, having your fellow coworkers there to talk to about, and kind of, like I said, bounce ideas off and just get that understanding that, there's other people in the same situation out there. You're not the only one, trying to balance it all and trying to get it all done, right? So having that opportunity to just talk across, departments to other leaders and just say, hey, how do you do this? Or, the other day, silly example, I have a German Shepherd. The German Shepherd, I could go home every night. I could walk that dog for 5 hours and that dog would still need to be walked again. So I was desperate. I couldn't find anybody in the community. So it might've been you. I mean, I don't remember who it was, but somebody recommended rover.com, and not to plug anybody, but so I called her. I was very lucky. I found this great dog walker, and she comes over and walks Bear every day, which I would love to be able to do that. Bear is the dog, by the way.
Right.
But I don't always have the time, but I know I can do that. And I know it was something that needed to be completed. So I, talked to people. I asked, hey, what do you do in this situation? What are you guys doing for, especially with 5 hours, sometimes I have to work later at night. Sometimes I have to come in early in the morning. So I want to make sure my responsibilities outside of work are also taken care of. So and that's where you find those type of things, right? Who do you guys use to, walk your dog? Or, and when my children were littler, where do you find a babysitter? What school programs are good, right? Because like you said, my children were always in sports. I had twin boys, and my oldest played lacrosse. One of my sons played football. One of my sons plays alto and tenor sax. So
lots of schedules going on.
Yeah, we tried to get them in the same things because they were twins, but yeah, that
doesn't work.
No. So, but just making friends with the other moms and saying, hey, can you handle carpool this week? I'll get them next week. You know what I mean? It's like I said, it's all about making those relationships, whether it be in work, out of work, and asking for help.
I was going to because you also are part of Chief, and that enables you to connect with leaders outside of gaming. So it's not just about building those networks within gaming. It's also, connecting with leaders and fellow females or males through other networks that are available.
Yes. So. Yeah. Chief is, I'm relatively new. I joined Chief, I would say almost a year ago. Yeah. And it does. It gives you that venue, right, to talk to other executives and how they've done it. And how, people from women from other industries, they had Shonda Rhimes do an hour speech, and it's some of the same thing, right? Just to network with other women, see how they do it, see how they got to where they're at. Some people think that your career needs to be on a straight, trajectory, and it, and I've said this before in other interviews. I think that too many times people think that if your career doesn't go forward, it's going backwards.
Right.
And I would disagree. I think sometimes you need to take a step backwards. Sometimes you may take the lateral, but any opportunity to learn something more in the end is going to help your career. So sometimes take a step backwards, like I said, take a step sideways. It's nothing but better you and make you a more marketable applicant.
Right. I totally agree. And speaking of like a better you and the networking and the building connections, I think mentorship is also something that's very important. Have you had a mentor that's had an impact on you and your career growth and opportunities you've chosen to take?
So very early on in my career, I went to school. Like I said, I was, single parent, worked full time, went to school full time. So when I graduated, I did not sit for the exam right away. The CPA exam, Certified Public Accountant, not what, certain people choose. I won't tell you those on recording what other people say CPA stands for. I'll leave it to the imagination. But, my boss that hired me at Harris Entertainment went as the manager of internal audit, because I got out of an audit for a while, and I did some ops, and I was about a year short on experience to get my CPA license, and I'd only sat for 2 parts, and I was like the last 2 parts, and my career was going in gaming, and so I was like, okay, I'm going to stay in gaming. Doing pretty well. I was a manager. And my boss at the time was like, come on, you just have 2 more parts. Just finish the exam. Because in the state of Nevada, you had to sit for all 4 at once. Mm-hmm. So I sat for 4, passed 2, and I had 2 left. And he's like, come on, just finish it. I can sign off on your last year. Come on, do it. And, I'm very grateful that he was behind me to do that, because that wasn't easy, right? I'm done with school, tired at this point. Last thing I wanted to do was take on more studying. But I think with his prompting and his pressing, it made me, sit back and study for the exam and take the exam. And I passed the other 2 parts and I got my credentials. And that's one of my proudest moments, passing or sitting for the CPA exam is probably one of the most difficult things I've had to do from a career standpoint. It's not, I'm sure you can talk to anybody who's taken it. It's not an easy exam. A lot of information is covered. And like I said, since I was 12 when I started, when I took it, it was on Scantrons and you had to handwrite the essay. So it was 2 days straight, like 8 hours each day of testing. So, but I'm very happy that I did that. And I probably would not have done that without the support of my management team.
Well, much kudos to you for doing that and doing that while you're being a mom and working and successfully passing, and that you had the mentor that pushed you to do that. How have you paid it forward? Because I believe you've done the mentorship program here as well, right?
Yeah,
and
I've done the mentorship program. I apologize. I've done the mentorship program here. As well for San Bernardino College, but also here, any executive or any employee who has any questions, I'm more than happy to help. I think it's very, very important to help folks develop their career and be there to answer questions and guide them and give them, leadership, enhancements and next steps and advise them where to go, right? Because some people might be too scared to take that step or they're out of their comfort zone. And I think that it's important as a mentor to help those people or those individuals take that next step and help them develop their careers and be there to answer their questions and what they need to know for next steps.
No, I definitely agree. And just pulling on that a little bit more. So mentorship is extremely important. But what else do you do to build that culture of development, of positivity for your team? Is there any specific tips you would give for that? Like, how do you build a successful, positive work culture?
So what I would say, I think what's really important is that you give your team the ability to make mistakes and let them know that mistakes happen and that you learn from mistakes just as much as you can learn from doing everything right. And you're not going to do everything right all the time. So don't be frightened to take chances, because I think sometimes opportunities get missed or a great idea might get overlooked because someone's afraid someone's going to say, oh, that's a stupid idea. No one's going to say that, right? Suggest it, work it through, and we can tell you why it would work or wouldn't work, or, it might be the next great thing, right? So don't be afraid to take those chances and to ask those questions, and don't be afraid to take an opportunity. You're always going to learn something from it, whether it be if it's a mistake, you'll learn even more.
No, I couldn't agree more. And that's what I think I've loved about being here, is that we really create that culture of support no matter what. And I think that's what fosters the sharing of ideas and helping us to remain innovative and forward thinking. Pivoting a little bit, and we're going to talk a little bit more about Lori Ware. So Lori, you have busy, hectic schedules, between work and home. So how do you disconnect and really make time for yourself so you're re-energized for the next day and bringing the 100% of you?
So I think my favorite thing to do from a disconnect, I like to travel, even if it's just weekend trips. I like to, see something new and go experience. Even when I took this opportunity and I drove, instead of flying and taking a moving truck, I drove back from Chicago, and I went to Mount Rushmore, went to Idaho Falls, things that I just had never seen, right? It was a chance, an opportunity. So I drove, I would drive a couple hours, I'd stop and see a site or two, and then I'd drive a couple more hours. So the week and a half before between jobs, I took that opportunity just to, travel and stop and visit. I went to Yosemite, so there's just, I think anytime you can go see someplace new, it doesn't have to be, overseas or some grandiose trip. It can just be on a weekend, right? We live in Redlands, we live in Rancho, we live in Beaumont. Have you been to Palm Springs? Have you been, there's so many fun and exciting things to do here in the state of California, right? I mean, spend a week and just go someplace new where you haven't been before and meet new people and try new things. I
love it. So outside of math, what's a subject you nerd out on that people may not know outside of math?
I love history. I'm a big fan of history. So yeah, I nerd out on time travel. I like to watch time travel shows or read time travel novels. So yeah, I'm big on time travel.
A favorite book or a quote?
Oh, geez. My favorite quote is actually, you want to be even with, is a Winnie the Pooh quote. So it's more about, I won't be able to quote it right now, but it's you're stronger than you believe. And I should have written it down for you, but it's the way, basically, you're braver than you think, you're stronger than you believe, you can do anything.
Yeah, I like that. That's a good motto to have every day. A personal routine that you use that would benefit others.
So for me, I'm extremely routine oriented because just with such a busy schedule, I have everything planned out. So for me, I just, I book the time to make sure I work out. Time for work and meetings, and then time in the evenings to take care of, other things you need to take care of at home. It's just, I'm very focused on marking the time off and making sure each aspect of my life gets the time that it's needed, right? Because for example, if you don't make the time to work out, you're not going to, from a health standpoint, it's very important that you keep that health, to be able to go to work every day and be there for your family. So you've got to make sure you carve out that time for you.
If you didn't touch on that, I was going to touch on that. I think that I need to get back into that routine of working out. And I think that you've been so good with that and carving out that time for yourself to make sure to either be part of the marathon we're doing here or yoga, whatever it may be. I feel like that's a good one I'm glad you mentioned that, because I need to do more of that, because it kind of helps you release at the same time, and you're healthier from doing it, right?
Yeah, I signed up for the marathon. We'll see if I actually run it. I am not a runner. I try. It's on my bucket list. I've always wanted to do a half marathon. It's really hard. I'm jealous of those folks that get out there and run. It's not. It looks a lot easier than it is. Trust me.
Yeah, I know my husband did a marathon, and it's all about the endurance, and I'm not there yet. Before I ask our famous last question, is there anything that we didn't touch on, any questions or anything that you'd like to share today with our audience? Since you have so much experience and such a strong leader here, is there anything that you feel that we could leave our audience with outside of what we've already talked about?
I would just say, because I've moved around. I lived in Northern Nevada. I've lived in Chicago. I just would say that never be afraid to take an opportunity and to learn something new. It might just be the next great thing. So just be willing to take chances and be willing to take the opportunities that life affords you.
I like that. And even earlier, you touched on being willing to make those moves that you may consider backwards or lateral so that you can make that move ahead. I couldn't agree more, because there's been times in life through moves or personal changes that I've had to do that. And they were some of the best opportunities and got me to where I'm at today. So I think that tip and advice is awesome. So before we go, our last question that we ask every one of our guests: 3 tips to take your career to the next level that you'd like to give our audience.
So, one, I would say, take those opportunities, like I said before, that are afforded to you. If there's a project that comes up, something outside of your wheelhouse, or if there's a program you can get into to learn something about another department, take those opportunities. 2, I would say like we talked about earlier, get a mentor. I think it's important. Even I today have a mentor. I know sometimes it changes with your job. It just, depends. But I think it's very important to have a mentor, someone who will help you and guide you, because you need someone to be able to bounce ideas off of and bounce concerns off of. And 3, I just make sure you make time for yourself. Right? Because I think it is important to be the best you and to be able to bring the best you every day to work. You need to make sure that you've taken care of yourself.
Well, thank you, Lori Ware. We loved having you on the show today. I hope you have a wonderful rest of the day, our audience as well. And please check out nextlevelcasinocareers.com. Have a great one.
Thank you, Serena.
Check out more episodes on nextlevelcasinocareers.com.